welcome back to our candidate discussion for Tybee MLK Human Rights Organization. We are now going to interview Miss Elaine McGruder, or actually just have a discussion with her and ask a series of questions. And these are the same questions that we have asked the other candidates as well, focusing on issues of quality of life and livability and in general, but specifically focused on issues and challenges of diversity, equity, and inclusion as part of our focus on the purpose of Tybee MLK. So welcome, Elaine.
Thank you.
Yeah, glad to have you here.
Thank
and
you.
Looking forward to hearing your responses and giving you an opportunity to share from your heart. So we'll just ask the quick three questions. I may have a question of clarification.
Sure.
And then at the end, we want to give you a couple minutes simply to talk from your heart, issues and challenges, concerns that you have as a candidate.
Thank you.
So, yeah, so we'll just get started with the first question. So there's a nonprofit named Partners for Livable Communities, and they say that the first principle of livability is equitable access to things such as housing, neighborhood environment, transportation, clean environment, healthcare, civic and social engagement, education, inclusion, and safety. And in recent years, the property values here on Tybee have really gone very high.
Yes.
And so the first question we want to ask is, how do you think about, how do you propose to help provide affordable housing for a variety of incomes so that a variety of people could come and live here and actually thrive here?
I've thought about this a lot, and I've talked with a number of people. I think the only way possible that we have of providing affordable housing, if we can, is to look at private and public partnerships, because I don't think the businesses can do it themselves. I don't know of anybody, any developer that's willing to do anything that's not going to make them, I'm sorry to say this, that's not going to make them the most profit possible. And in order to have reasonable, affordable housing for anybody, you can't charge the highest rents. I have heard, and I've sent a couple of texts to find out, I have heard that a couple of businesses on Tybee actually provide some housing for some of their employees at reasonable rents, of course. And I think that's one of the ways to go, but I don't think they can do it by themselves. So I think, and I don't mean just the Tybee government period, and some of the businesses, if they would work together, and I would encourage that. I would think that would be something that we could do, and especially for people who work here, who need affordable housing.
Yeah. Have you done a lot of research in that respect of public-private partnerships specifically focused on housing?
I have not done that recently. That was one of the things I remember years ago. There was I think it was called the Metro Atlanta Housing Coalition that I was familiar with and worked with, and they did research, and that was also one of the things they talked about then, was the private public partnerships.
It certainly sounds like a viable alternative for the local government and businesses to work together to provide the kind of housing that would bring in some people to work in some of the tourist industries and the hospitality industry.
And some of the people that are already working here, I've just heard too many stories of people that have worked here in different restaurants and bars and cleaning and everything else, who have had to move because their rents just kept going up.
Yeah. Good, thanks for that.
Sure.
The next question has to do with another principle of livability, and that is the obligation of elected officials to cooperate and negotiate for the common good. There's certainly some challenging issues on Tybee. The current issue of STVRs and their impact on the community. There's lots of perspectives on that. There's differences of opinion and perspective on the environment and infrastructure. So the environment here on the community is ripe with the opportunity for conflict and disagreement. As a council person, how would you go about trying to integrate all these perspectives and creating an environment of collaboration for the common good?
Well, I totally believe in working together with everyone. Obviously with 6 people on the council and the mayor only voting when there's a tie, you've got to be able to work well enough with other members of council to be able to vote for anything, to get anything passed. But I think before you get to that point, you have to work with the community and let them know what's going on. One of the things I've been doing since I was on Planning Commission here and as a member of the community, I post on Facebook what goes on before it happens. I post what the agenda is for the Planning Commission. I go look at the sites, I talk with the neighbors, and I think this is part of what you've got to talk with your neighbors. And I think of Tybee as it's all, to me, one big neighborhood. We should all be working together. And I think that's a big part of what you have to do. And you have to let people know ahead of time, not just with Planning Commission, but anything that the City Council is talking about doing, whether it has to do with STVRs or liquor license fee increase or anything. I think you need to let people know about it ahead of time and then listen. I think a big part of what gets lost sometimes is that communication is a two-way street. We can't just pronounce what the City Council and the city wants to do. We have to ask, what do people think about it? I mean, you live here, or you have a business here, or both. What do you think, and what do you think we should do? And listen to people, pay attention. And I think that's one of the most important.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is there's got to be a dialogue between elected officials and the community. It's not just a one-way dissemination information, but listening is very important.
Yes.
Yeah. And what have you found to be the most effective ways of hearing and giving people a voice?
Well, several things. One is every time that I post about an issue that's important to a number of people on Tybee, on Facebook, they respond. They let me know what happened 9 years ago or 10 or 15 years ago with this same kind of issue. Whether it's a variance request, a setback, anything like that, people will let you know what happens, but you have to listen, you have to pay attention. The other ways are the person-to-person contacts. I'm in a lot of groups. I'm in a couple of book clubs. I'm in the exercise class. And people talk to me anywhere I go about issues. I go out to eat a lot. A lot of other people eat out too. And I talk with people in the bars and restaurants about what's important. I mean, I met this very nice couple Sunday at Coco's who are members of the American Legion like I am. And we talked about issues. I think that anywhere people are gathered or you meet people, listen to them, ask them what's going on with them and what is important to them. That a lot of people don't do Facebook, or they don't want to do an email, they don't want to call City Hall, and they don't want to come to public meetings. But if you're available, and my cell phone number is out there, my email, etc., if you are available, people will talk to you and tell you what they think. You just have to listen.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much for that.
Sure.
Appreciate that. So here's the last question. It's a little bit lengthy. I'm going to try to condense it. Again, livability has to do partially with fair and equitable access to education. And here on the island, we have a charter school, the Tybee Island Maritime Academy. And they describe their primary attendance zone as being east of the Lazaretto Bridge, so the Tybee Island area, Spanish Hammock. That's the primary focus, but they also draw a major portion of their students from the Chatham County as a whole. And they have stated that they're focused on providing an increased chance for a variety of economic background students. to come and attend a variety of races, and there's been some challenges with that, I'll say. And we know that the city council doesn't really have any control over TEMA. At the same time, we have some anecdotal stories of families who have come here thinking that their child could attend TEMA,
Right.
only to find out that they've got to go through the lottery process and they don't actually get to attend TEMA. And that's been frustrating to them. Some families, I'm not sure how many have left, just anecdotal stories. How do you think the council, or you as a council person, might be able to influence TEMA when it comes to encouraging more diversity, equity, and inclusion when it comes to students from a variety of economic backgrounds, educational backgrounds, some being gifted and talented, other having some learning disabilities or racial backgrounds? I realize that's a long question. I'm just really thinking about, how can this charter school here on Tybee focus more on a diverse population of students?
Sure. I met a couple of members of the board of TEMA a few months ago, and the principal, when they were asking for the city council. So the city council does have some influence. They were asking for the planning commission to recommend to the city council and the city council to vote on their variance request so that they could have the larger the larger portable classroom building, so they could also have 7th grade and 8th grade. So I met people, I walked around the area that they were talking about, and got to know them and to hear more about what their program was about. So I found them to be open-minded. I think that they will pay attention to, as the recently passed law last year and the state board rules about having a weighted lottery for Tybee children. I think they are going to pay attention to that. When they were asked at the public hearing about the variance, about how many children from Tybee did they have, they said they had, this was a few months ago, that they had 90 children from Tybee enrolled for the fall, along with the few hundred other children from the rest of Chatham County. So I really do think they will pay attention to that. One of the things that makes me believe this is a few weeks ago, there was a special program for children put on by a friend of mine, just for children, 10:30 in the morning at the Post Theater. And Pete the Cat was one of the attractions that was going to be talked about. Not that Pete the Cat was there. And I posted this several times, and I called Carolyn, the president of the board, and asked, would you make sure that your parents and the team of kids all know about this program? And she had already let them know about it. So I think that's I really do think they're open-minded to trying to be as diverse and attract as many people of diverse backgrounds as they can. And I think the fact that they're providing for transportation from the rest of Chatham County makes a difference too, as far as somebody that might not have the transportation to get their child here. I also worked with, when I was a volunteer at the Tybee Library before COVID, the team of children would come down one class at a time, 2 or 3 classes a day. And I saw that they did have diversity then. Some diversity, not as much as we would like, and I think not as much as they would like, because I had mentioned that to a few people. Apparently, they are the number 2 charter school in the state of Georgia. And I got the impression that the feeling on the board was that they would be number 1 if they did have more diversity. So I think they really are in favor of that, and I would encourage that.
Very good. Do you and I don't know the answer to this, but have they discussed, do you know, or have any conversation about having some kind of goals for diversity?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I can ask, but I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I wasn't throwing you a hardball question. I was just wondering in your discussions with them if they had mentioned.
And I don't know with the law if they can I don't know if they would be accused of setting, I know you said goals, but the first thing that comes to my mind is quotas. I don't know if they would be accused of setting quotas if they did anything beyond what the law says.
Sure, exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that.
Sure.
So those are the questions that we had to ask. We just wanted also to give you an opportunity to share, from your heart, any particular issue or a couple issues that might be of concern to you, or just speak to the audience out there, something that they would like to know.
I think the quality of life for residents is one of the most important things. It is so distressing to hear people tell me that they don't feel like they live in a neighborhood anymore. I met this very nice gentleman the other day on the beach, he was telling me he and his wife have lived here on Tybee for 16 years. When she retires in 2 years, they don't know if they're going to keep living here or not because they have no neighbors anymore. Everybody around them is a short-term rental, so they never know who's going to be there. And the nice man said that he didn't feel comfortable leaving his wife by herself, even if he went on a 1 or 2 day trip, because he doesn't know who's next door. And that's not a neighborhood. I want us, and I know a number of people have told me different stories about different areas they're in, because people are worried about that feeling, that neighborhood feeling, having neighbors here that you know. A lot of people complain about the noise and the parking, the trash. Those are issues, and those are ones that concern a lot of people. They are important, but it's also that you have neighbors you know and trust to keep an eye out for your kid coming home, walking home from school, for example. You want to have that quality of life, and I think a lot of the issues I've been looking at, like clean beaches, the STVRs and controls on the STVRs, water conservation. We've got to do something about our water. All of those things are things that we have to look at when we're talking about quality of life for the residents, the people who live here. Thank you.
Well, thank you for making time to come in and speak with us and
Sure.
with our audience, and we greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you for doing this.